Hey guys. Today's episode is going to deal with some very sensitive topics. I'm going to be talking to you about my pregnancy loss journey. I'm going to be talking to you about abortion. So if you are someone that finds these things to be upsetting or triggering, you may want to skip this episode. However, I am sharing my story with you in hopes that if you are going through your own pregnancy loss, fertility struggle journey, that you will find some hope and that you will find some comfort knowing that you're not alone. Is this mic on? Ugh, I'm so bad with fucking technology.
Mommy, you said the F word.
Sorry, babe. Welcome to Mommy You Said the F Word. I'm your host, Sarah Goldsboro. I've experienced firsthand the messy, magical, and sometimes maddening world of motherhood. We'll share some laughs and shed some tears as I dive deep into the highs and lows of life, confront loss, chat about career, fitness, creating a life you love, finding yourself again after kids, and who the fuck knows what else. This is a space where authenticity reigns supreme. So get ready to strip away the BS and get candid as fuck. So I didn't write down any notes for this episode. This is the first episode that I am talking to you specifically about my pregnancy losses, my struggles with my motherhood journey, I guess you could say. So I'm just going to speak to you directly from the heart. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my journey and what I've been through and kind of what's led me to where I am now. This podcast and some other projects that I'm starting were because of everything that I have been through. And it's really what inspired me and motivated me to talk about these things publicly and to create a safe space for women who are going through their own struggles. And it's because I didn't necessarily know when I was going through my struggles who I could talk to or if I should talk about it. It's just such a hard situation. Anything dealing with miscarriage or pregnancy losses or abortion, they're just such isolating experiences to go through as a woman and as a mother. And you know, people can be judgmental and people can be very like hush hush about these things and just don't talk about it and it'll go away. But no, like that's not true. I feel like talking about these things is so important. I feel like it is the only way to be able to heal, and to share your story is so helpful and healing to other people. And it just makes other people feel like they're not going through it alone. And almost every friend and client that I have, I feel like has been through some sort of struggle of their own. And so I feel like in talking about it and sharing stories with each other, it's helped me heal. I know for a fact it's helped some of my friends and clients and women that I know. I know that it's helped them heal. So I really do feel like it is important to just have open conversation about these things. It's not something that just needs to be behind closed doors. And so that was really one of my purposes and missions for starting this podcast. I like to talk to you about lighthearted, motivational, funny stuff. These experiences that I've had over like the last decade of my life dealing with miscarriage and pregnancy loss, this has really not only changed me as a person and as a mother, but it's kind of set my life in somewhat of a different direction, and not a direction that I thought I'd be going in. But, you know, that's life. Sometimes unexpected things happen. And when you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And that is something I fully believe. I feel like the universe and God has its own plans for you. And I do feel like these horrible experiences that I've been through, although they were terrible at the time and caused me so much pain and depression, I do feel like they were given to me for a reason. They happened to me for a reason because I'm just a very like strong-willed person, and I am trying to turn my pain into my purpose. And I feel like not everybody has the capacity to do that. Some people, pain, when they process and deal with their pain, it takes them down, and they can't talk about it. And so that is just the way some people are built, and I respect that. Not everybody is able to talk about things that they've been through for various reasons, but I am someone who not only feels compelled to talk about these things, but it's almost necessary for me in order to process what I've been through and to heal and to move past and to turn it into something that can be healing and hopeful to other people. So that is kind of where I'm at now with doing the podcast. And then I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about another project of mine in just trying to create this community and safe space for women to be able to share their stories, to be able to connect, and to be able to heal from their own experiences and struggles with pregnancy loss, miscarriages, fertility struggles. It's all, I feel like, this club that nobody wants to be a part of, but here we are. And so my journey to motherhood, my struggles, my journey started about a decade ago. And I had 2 miscarriages before I had my son Camden in 2016. He's 8 years old. And then after that, I had 3 more miscarriages. And then I had my last pregnancy loss ended with an abortion. I'm going to talk mainly about that last pregnancy with you today because I feel like, at least in my opinion, there is a difference in the healing process when it comes to miscarriage versus abortion. Now, when I had my miscarriages, majority of them I ended up having to have a DNC, which is a medical term. It basically is an abortion. It's a medical abortion. It helps you be able to, once you find out you're miscarrying, instead of just allowing nature to take its course, because you can end up with an infection. So a DNC is a medical abortion, and you are put under, and all of the pregnancy tissue, the fetus, everything is removed while you were under anesthesia, so you're not awake while it's happening. And I do feel like it is less traumatic than having to endure a miscarriage naturally, which I did for 2 of my miscarriages. I took medication at home, which allows things to progress on its own, and having to endure that, it's quite a traumatic experience for a woman. But my last loss was an abortion. And for me, the healing process was very different with the abortion versus the miscarriages. And the reason is because I felt like with my miscarriages, like I had no control over that. Although I was very sad, I was very depressed following my miscarriages, I felt like there was nothing I could have done. It was going to happen whether I liked it or not. And you move on eventually, but it's nothing you could have done differently. With my abortion, I felt a little differently. So I found out I was pregnant shortly before my 40th birthday. And like I said, I had several miscarriages leading up to this final pregnancy. And this pregnancy was a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't planning on having any more children at this point. We had made the decision we weren't going to try anymore, but I ended up pregnant and we were very happy and excited. I went to my first appointment and everything looked great. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, it was meant to be. And so, because I was now almost 40 years old, I decided with this pregnancy I was going to have the genetic testing done. And they test for a lot of different things, but genetic abnormalities like Down syndrome, that's like a major one. So, I had the testing done and I was pretty nervous, but everything looked good at my first appointment. So, I was hopeful. And then I got the call from the doctor while I was at work, and she told me that the test came back and it was 90 some percent accurate, and it was saying that the baby was going to have Down syndrome. And that was like my biggest fear. And I feel like you think you know what you're going to do if that situation were to happen, but I feel like until you're in that situation, you don't truly know what you would do. And with my pregnancy with Camden, I didn't even have the genetic testing done. I was 34 when I had Cam, so I was like just under they consider 35 and up geriatric pregnancies, which I hate that term, but basically it just means that once you're 35, the chances of Down syndrome, other genetic disorders, the percentage is much higher. So they recommend doing genetic testing after 35 years old. But with Cam, I was 34. It was my first successful pregnancy because, like I said, I had 2 miscarriages before I was pregnant with him. And so when I got pregnant with Cam and I went to that first appointment and everything looked good, I didn't even opt to have the genetic testing done with that pregnancy. My husband and I were like, whatever God wants to give us, we will accept. We are just happy to have a healthy pregnancy and to be pregnant and to be progressing. And we were just so excited. And it really wasn't even something that we really talked about, thought about. We just believed that everything was going to be fine. And it was with the pregnancy with Cam. Everything was perfect. We were very lucky, but it was just something that like we were fine with whatever we were blessed with at the time. But I feel like with this pregnancy, I felt a little different because I did have Cam already. I feel like once you get pregnant and you already have a child, you have to take your other child or your other children into consideration. So I did decide I wanted to have the genetic testing done with this pregnancy. Just, I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to know if there was going to be any problems, because the last thing I wanted to do was to tell Cam that he was going to be a big brother and then something happened. So I was just really cautious going into this pregnancy, and also being the fact that I was 40 years old and the probability of something happening or genetic abnormalities, it was much higher. So I just wanted to be prepared, whatever the case. So the genetic testing came back positive for Down syndrome. And this was my worst nightmare. This was exactly what I did not want to happen. I did not want to have to make this decision, but I was at least grateful that I was able to find out so my husband and I could talk about it and really decide what was going to be best for us and best for Camden and just our life and all of the things. It's the hardest decision that we've ever had to make. And it is not one that I had ever thought I was going to have to make. And I really don't feel like you know what you're going to decide until you're in that situation. And everybody's Families are different. Everybody's relationship with God is different. That was a big thing for me. I mean, I'm not super religious. I'm very spiritual. I do believe in God. I'm Christian, but I'm not like super religious where I'm like, God's going to punish me or I'm going to go to hell if I do this or that. But I do have a relationship with God. And so this was tough for me. I was angry. I was angry at God when I found out that I was going to have to make this decision because I felt like after all that I've been through, all these miscarriages, you finally give me this last pregnancy and everything is good at first. It's like a tease. And I was like, and now you're making me, after all I've been through, making me make this fucking decision, this hell of a decision. Like, how fucking dare you? I was so angry. Immediately, they put you in contact with a genetic counselor. They do not persuade you one way or another to have an abortion or to have the baby. Their job is to give you all the facts when it comes to Down syndrome, or in our case, Down syndrome, but there's tons of other genetic disorders or abnormalities. And their job is to give you the facts when it comes to these disorders so that you can make your best informed decision and you can decide for yourself and your family what you want to do. So my husband and I talked to this woman over Zoom, I think twice. She gave us all of the ins and outs when it came to Down syndrome, what to expect, what possibilities, percentages. We found out that there was a incredibly high chance that our baby would have to have open heart surgery immediately upon birth because a very high percentage of babies with Down syndrome have heart defects or heart problems. That's like a big thing when it comes to Down syndrome, which I didn't know because I was never in this situation before, so I hadn't done a lot of research on it. A lot of children with Down syndrome can have learning disabilities and those types of things, but it's not even so much that. Babies and people with Down syndrome, they can be very unhealthy. They can be very sick and they can die at a very young age. A high percentage of them have heart problems and heart defects and have to have multiple surgeries throughout their life. What she told us is Down syndrome is the genetic disorder where you're never going to be like in the clear. It's always constantly changing. They can be very healthy one moment and be very unhealthy the next. So you're never going to be like a, let's just say, a normal person, somebody who doesn't have any genetic disorders, somebody who doesn't have Down syndrome. They could get sick or have a problem health-wise and have a surgery and they're going to be fine after that. You're not going to have to worry about it anymore. With Down syndrome, it's not like that. You can fix one problem and another problem pop up and you're never going to be in the clear with Down syndrome. And there is a very high percentage of children with Down syndrome that die at a very young age. And that's just a few things that we were told. I mean, she gave us so much. She went into so much depth about Down syndrome and possibilities and all of the things. It was so much to think about. And the thing I thought about the most was my son, because he is such a sensitive, loving child. Like, he would have been the best big brother. He loves kids. He loves his cousins. He's so good with other kids his age. He's so good with little kids and babies. He's just like such a sweet, loving child. I knew that if I had this baby, he would be instantly attached and in love. And I thought about, what if I had this baby and it was very sick and We were constantly having to have surgeries and constantly having to be in the hospital. And God forbid, what if the baby, or maybe the baby made it to a few years old and then died. I thought about all of these possibilities because they were possibilities. This was the reality of having a child with Down syndrome. These are all possibilities. And some may argue that with any child, there's always those possibilities. And yes, I do agree with that. Like, bad things can happen to anybody or to children who are healthy. But the probability of things happening with a child with Down syndrome was much higher than a healthy baby or a healthy child. Much, much higher. And this was the reality. Looking at what we thought our life was going to look like and the reality of what it actually would look like, it was going to be completely different. And I already have so much anxiety when it comes to my son. After I had Cam, I had extreme postpartum anxiety for several years after I had him. And I think all moms have a certain level of anxiety when it comes to their children. You're constantly worrying about them, and that's just a normal part of motherhood, obviously. But I had like extreme postpartum anxiety with him, and he was a healthy baby and a healthy child. I thought about how I would be if I had a child that I knew was going to have health problems going into it. And I thought about, how that would affect me, my health, and then how it would affect me mentally, and how that would affect me as a mother to Cam, and how it would affect my marriage. Because when I get extremely anxious, I get triggered very easily. I get very irritable and angry and emotional. And this was like how I was for a while after I had Cam. I did end up going on anti-anxiety meds, and that helped. And then eventually, I feel like as he got older, it went away eventually. But I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a constant state of panic and anxiety if I have a child with extreme health problems. I just know how I am. And then we had to think about if something happened, like how that would affect Cam. And we had to think about past the baby stage and the toddler stage. If we had a child with Down syndrome, depending on the severity, because there is different levels of severity. There are some very high functioning people with Down syndrome, but then there are some people that they need to be cared for their entire lives. And was that something that my husband and I were willing to do, or that we wanted to take on? These were all conversations that we had to have with each other, and we had to weigh and think about and decide on. And, it was not a decision that we could wait on. This was like something we had to decide immediately. And so ultimately, we decided to not continue with the pregnancy. And at this point, I was, I believe, 15 to 16 weeks pregnant. And I decided to have an abortion and to not continue with the pregnancy. And my husband and I both agreed on that. And it was the hardest decision, I think, in my entire life. I can't think of a harder decision that I've had to make. And I had the abortion, which it was just there's such a difference between having a D&C and having, I guess you could say, an elective abortion. You are treated differently. Not that I was treated poorly in any kind of way, but the way in which the doctors and the hospitals treat a D&C versus an abortion is two totally different things. First of all, my OBGYN is affiliated with a Catholic hospital, so they could not do the actual abortion. So then I was given the option of either going to an abortion clinic, or there was like one specific hospital in my area that would do them. And they were like, we recommend doing the hospital because anytime you go to an abortion clinic, there's usually protesters, and it's not always the best experience. And so I ended up going to the hospital, which was fine. But again, it was just like very hush hush. I had to, go to this very specific area of the hospital. It's not like a sign on the door. It's very like secretive. It just makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, like you're like sneaking around. It's just not a good decision because people have to be so quiet about it. And they do that for your protection because of protesters. So it is a very discreet location of the hospital. I understand that, but it makes you feel like you are doing something wrong. And the hardest part was obviously afterwards. It's the most isolating, sad, depressing. It was probably the worst months of my life. I felt so angry. I felt so sad. I felt so alone. I felt so trapped. Like I was never going to move on from this experience. And I feel like that is the common thread that I hear from a lot of women, or most women who've been through pregnancy loss or abortion, is they feel so isolated and alone. And it wasn't that I didn't have the support of my family or my friends. Everybody in my life was very like supportive and understanding, but you feel like the world is going on around you and like people are moving on with their lives around you and you were just like stuck. That's how I felt. I felt like I was just like standing still and everything was like moving around me. And it was something that I thought about every single day for months, probably years. There's not a day that goes by that I don't at least think about it. But for months, it was all I thought about. And although my husband, this happened to him too, I felt like he moved on from it much quicker than I did, which also made me very angry and resentful. I didn't talk about it every day, even though it was on my mind. I didn't talk about it every day. So I think he thought I had moved on or I was starting to move on because I wasn't talking about it all the time, but I was thinking about it and it made me mad. I was like, why isn't he as sad as I am? Why does he seem to be like moving on and moving on with his life? It caused a lot of problems in our relationship for a while, and we had to do marriage counseling because I was turning into a monster sometimes. I was so angry. And I wasn't angry at my husband. I was angry at the situation. I was angry that I had to make that decision. I was angry that I wasn't able to give my son a sibling. I was sad. At the end of the day, I was just sad. And it came out in anger. So we worked through our issues and our feelings. And I feel like my husband definitely, he actually had way more feelings about the situation than I even was aware of. And so we really did come to a better place after doing marriage counseling and talking about how that situation affected us. We really did come to a better place after that and a better understanding. And just, I feel that was really healing because I really did feel like I lost a part of myself after I had the abortion. And I think that he felt like he lost a part of me as well. I don't think people realize how hard of a situation it is, and it's not something you just move on from immediately. It has long-term effects on women. It has long-term effects on marriages and families. This is not an easy situation or a situation anybody wants to be in. So this is why, like, when the media brings up abortion, I immediately feel like I have a different perspective than some people have. If you've never had to make that decision, if you've never had an abortion, then you don't know what you would do if you were in that situation. You may think that you know what you would do. I never thought that I would ever have an abortion. I honestly had never thought like that there would be a situation I'd be in where I would choose to have an abortion. But you don't know what you would do until you're in a situation. And when the media talks about abortion, there's just so many different situations. There's so many different circumstances. There's so many different layers when it comes to abortion. I was really vocal about it during the elections because I do feel so strongly that women should, at the end of the day, that is a choice only a woman and her doctor can make together. And it is nobody else's business. And it should not be anybody else's decision. And I know that is not the case in certain states. Luckily, I live in a state where you can easily obtain an abortion. It is very difficult in some states, and my heart goes out to women who live in those states because it is hell on earth. Having an abortion in a state that allows them is already difficult. I can't imagine trying to get an abortion in a state where it's extremely difficult. That is just, it adds insult to injury. And so my heart really goes out to women who live in a place where it is not easily accessible. I really do feel like that needs to change, and I do hope that it changes eventually. I think it's going to be a while, but that is why I feel so strongly about continuing the conversation and talking about it openly, because I don't think people just understand the negative effects of not being able to have an abortion or a safe abortion, or there's just so many different situations where an abortion is necessary or where an abortion should be a choice for that woman. And it's something that I'm an advocate for and something that I'm going to continue to advocate for and talk about and push the conversation on, because I do think it's important, very important. And I don't think any woman should have to be forced to have a pregnancy or a baby that is not going to be healthy. I just believe that women should be able to decide for themselves what is right for their life or for their health. And it's as simple as that. So last year, I was given the opportunity to write my story, to write my memoir about my motherhood journey, my pregnancy loss story, in a collective memoir. It's called The Losses We Keep. This is a collection of stories from contributing authors, and we are a group of women who have all experienced fertility struggles, loss, but at the end of the day, we all want to give other women hope, and we want to give other women some healing and know that they're not alone and that we are all in this together, and there is a community out there that knows how you feel and knows the emotions and everything that you're going through right now. We have been through a similar situation. Although all of our experiences are completely different, we all experienced something that was extremely hard, extremely painful, and took a while to heal from. But we are all here for you. We are here to support you. And we are giving you our raw, real stories so you can know that you're not alone. And for other people who are reading it, so they can find understanding and see all of these different situations. Everybody's story is different. Nobody's story is exactly the same. And it is really important to understand just all of the different layers and all the different complications and situations when it comes to miscarriage, pregnancy loss, fertility struggles, abortion. There's so many different layers to all of this. So reading these stories is really eye-opening and really enlightening, and I think it will give some understanding to people who maybe were a little judgmental or just have never experienced this themselves, and allow them to be supportive to maybe somebody in their life who is going through something and maybe they don't know how to comfort that person or support that person. So I feel like these stories, this book will, help those people be able to be more supportive towards their family members or friends who are going through something, because it is hard. It's hard for both parties involved. It's hard for the person, obviously, who's going through it, but then it's hard for the people around that person, especially somebody who has never gone through something like this, to be able to support that person. So this is a really important book. It's the first book of its kind. The stories, you literally get dropped into the middle of the mess. Each story takes you to the heart of exactly how each of us felt when we were going through our journey or our situation. It gets to the nitty-gritty. It takes you into the mess, because I think it's important to really understand how messy life is when you're going through these situations, and it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, and there are so many moving parts, and there's so much emotion, and it's real, it's raw, it takes you right into it. And so you can really feel how we were feeling when we were going through these situations. And I think it will give people so much more understanding and so much more compassion and empathy for someone who is experiencing a pregnancy loss or a miscarriage or having to make that hard decision of having an abortion. There's so many situations that women find themselves in, and I think it's just really important to see. It's really giving you a peek inside of, this is really what happens when you're having a miscarriage. This is really what happens when you have to decide to have an abortion. This is what happens when you're going through IVF and it's not working. Like, these stories are so raw and real and beautiful. I highly encourage you to buy a copy of the book. It's called The Losses We Keep: Our Journey of Fertility, Loss, and Never-Ending Hope. And you can find it on Amazon. And I highly encourage you to get a copy of this book. It just came out in October, and it is doing amazing. So many people are reading it, and it's getting really good feedback. And so many people are just finding so much healing from it and just finding it so enlightening. And so I really encourage you to get a copy of this book if you haven't already. And if it's for yourself, I hope that you find it healing and you find that you don't feel so alone in your situation, and then hold on to it and pass it on to someone else who needs it. And that can be hard sometimes when you're going through things. Somebody giving you a book like this might be a reminder of a painful situation, and it can be triggering. But we wrote these stories with the idea that it would be a safe space for people to reflect on their own situation and find some hope and healing and just feel not so alone in their situation. So I think it is safe to give it to somebody if they're going through their own situation. But at least we feel like it opens the door to conversations and continuing the mission of just allowing women to have a space to talk about these things and heal and not feel so alone. So this book is just so near and dear to me, and I'm so grateful to have been given the opportunity to be a part of it and write my story. Writing my story for me was life-changing. It was so healing for me, and it allowed me to turn my pain into purpose, and it makes me now want to continue doing that through this podcast. And then more recently, I decided to start a new project to create an uplifting community for women to be able to come together and connect and share their stories. So I'm going to be having events, and my first event is on February 2nd. This year, 2025. This project is called Bounce Back Club. And so what that means to me is bouncing back. When you think about bouncing back, you think about bouncing back after having a baby, like your body, which that's a little tiny part of it. So for me, fitness has become a big part of my life. After I had gone through all of my losses, I had decided that it was time I wanted to get back into some sort of fitness routine. It's through fitness. It was a part of my healing process. It's helped me so much in my life since experiencing all of these losses. It really has just helped me bounce back, if you will. It has helped me bounce back physically, but more it's the mental bounce back. I think about the darkness and isolation I felt when I was going through, especially like when I had the abortion, but through each of my miscarriages, the months following each loss were so dark and isolating. And especially after my last one, fitness really helped me bounce back from those dark times. And so that's really my inspiration for Bounce Back Club. It's women coming together to connect with each other who have gone through similar experiences, experienced loss. Maybe they're on their fertility journey and they're struggling with that. Maybe they've had miscarriages. Maybe they've had to have an abortion. Maybe they lost a child. Whatever the situation, my hope and my inspiration for this is for all of these women to be able to connect and to share their stories with each other and to be able to find hope and find healing in doing that, in coming together and knowing that they're not alone and knowing that there are people out there who can support them, who know firsthand what they are feeling, and having a safe space to do that in, because that is something that I've heard from so many women is like they didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know if they should talk about certain situations or certain things. They felt very judged at times. So taking all of that into consideration and having events catering specifically to all of you who have experienced these things and who are looking for this community and to make these connections. Bounce Back Club is specifically for you. I have experienced firsthand the feelings involved with going through these experiences. And so I know what I was looking for after going through all of this. I just wanted to talk to people who understood. I just wanted to talk to people who said, I know how you feel and I'm here for you and it's going to be okay. And I know it hurts so bad right now. And I know exactly what you're going through, but I promise you it gets better. I've been through this. There's so many things that like I feel like only women who have been through it understand, and only women who have been through it truly know. And I feel like you can have the best spouse in the world, you can have the best parents in the world, you can have the best friends in the world, but if they truly haven't been through what you've been through, then they may not be able to support you or comfort you the same way that somebody who has actually been through these things can give you. And so this is what I'm creating, a space where women who know these things firsthand, know these experiences and these emotions firsthand, we can all come together. And there's going to be a fitness aspect to these events because, like I said, fitness is something that I believe and something that has helped me bounce back from these dark times, and something that I feel is just it's just a way to prioritize yourself during a hard time. There's going to be a space for us to share our stories, and I will lead the conversation and talk about the book and my story, and some of the contributing authors from the book will be a part of these events and share their stories, but it opens the conversation and allows other women to tell their stories, and that is just like a domino effect. And it's just such a beautiful thing to witness, is just women telling and sharing their stories, and just you can see just the vulnerability, and it's so beautiful, and just allowing them to heal. And sometimes when women talk about their story or their experience, that might be like the first time that they've opened up about it. And to be a part of that, it's just so beautiful to witness. And I'm grateful that I have been able to help women talk and heal and share their stories. And so that is something that I am continuing to do through Bounce Back Club. It's going to be also fun and uplifting, a time to meet new people. It's going to involve self-care, just time for themselves. And that is something that's hard for moms. It's hard for women to sometimes prioritize themselves, but this is the time, this is the space to be able to do that and meet and connect with some women. I really feel like this is the beginning of something great, and I feel so excited and passionate about it. I want to grow this, and I do want it to be something that's more regular. I want it to be something where I can travel and have events all over the place so women can meet each other all over and bring it to different cities. But really, the goal and the mission is just to create an uplifting, safe space for women who have been through these experiences, and to be able to connect and share and heal with each other. And we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm so excited to start this new journey and to be able to turn my pain into passion and purpose. I plan to share other women's stories on the podcast as well, because I think it's, like I said, it's just so important to hear just all the different situations. It's so multifaceted and layered when it comes to pregnancy loss and people's fertility journeys and struggles. There's just so many different situations. So I want to talk to other women and allow them to share their stories with you. I plan on having other episodes where I talk about a little bit more about my story, but it was really important to me to be able to talk to you about this particular subject of abortion and my experience this is part of the reason why I decided to start my podcast and to start Bounce Back Club. So we will talk more about my story, about other women's stories. If you are listening to this and you would like to share your story with me, please reach out to me via email or through social media. Or if you would like to tell your story on the podcast, please reach out to me. I'm looking to connect with other women and inspire them to share their story, because I really do truly believe that has been a big part of my healing, being able to share my truth, my story, my experience, and to help other women. I will be posting the information regarding the Bounce Back Club events. And like I said, the first one is on February 2nd. So if you are in the Baltimore area, that's where the first event will be taking place, and I'll be posting about it on Instagram, and you can buy your ticket on Eventbrite. I am just really excited to start this club and invite women in to connect and to share and to heal. I feel so blessed to be able to start this journey with you, and I hope you'll be a part of it. I hope that you will join me for one of the events, if not this first one. If you are going through your own struggles right now, I encourage you to buy the book, The Losses We Keep. It is very hopeful and healing and just a beautiful book. It will help you feel not so alone in your situation, in your journey. It was written specifically for you. I thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It was really important for me to be able to share this part of my story with you. It was a big inspiration for me wanting to do the podcast and to start Bounce Back Club. I am grateful for everything that I've experienced. It has helped me get to where I am today, to be able to help other women. Just know that you're not alone, and know that your story is important. Sometimes life can just be so shitty. Sometimes life throws things at us that we never thought we would have to go through, and decisions we never thought we would have to make. But here we are, and we're strong, and we are resilient, and we're going to get through this together. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys really soon. Thank you so much for listening. Show me some love by sharing this episode, and be the first to know when new episodes drop by following the show wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube and follow me on social media at Mommy You Said the F Word.